Hello, my name is Bill Paxton. I'm the mayor of the city of Paducah. We host a show called Quality of Life in Paducah Matters. Now, as we've talked about before, quality of life is many things. It's good roads, good parks, good police department, good fire department, a good performing arts center, etc., etc. Today we're going to talk about the physical part of it, having a strong budget, which also is a quality of life issue. So it's my pleasure today to have Jeff Pederson here with us today, who's city manager, and John Perkins, who is our what I call our CFO, Chief Financial Officer. So gentlemen, it's good to have you all here. Jeff, you're coming on 2 years now with the city as the city manager. And I call the city manager the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer. Not talking about the budgeting so much now, but what's your general impression now that you've been in Paducah 2 years on what's Paducah all about and what do you think about our city?
Well, first let me say, Mayor, that I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you and the City Commission. I think we have a very fine group of people that have been elected by the people of Paducah to govern the community. And as well as with the organization, I think the City of Paducah is fortunate to have the quality of people we do. Of course, I work most directly with the managerial staff. We have a well-seasoned, highly motivated, well-trained group of people there, and I think that is part of the ingredients to success for effective programs and services that the city delivers. I really have enjoyed my time in Paducah. It's a very vibrant community. Obviously, there's so much that's going on, and the city is at the heart of a lot of that. Not just in the essential services that most cities do, some of the things you mentioned before, but some of the things that we do to incite additional activity in the community and interest in the community, both on the part of residents and those who are inclined to visit us. So I think Paducah is a very attractive community, and it's a community that is unique, I think, in many respects, certainly compared to a lot of other communities that I've been a part of.
The city wants a strong management team, and so when we had the opportunity to go out and find a city manager, we did a nationwide search, and we wanted the best possible city manager that we could find for Paducah. And so we found Jeff, and Jeff is now in Paducah, is doing a great job, but it just tells you that we don't hire our friends and our relatives. We go out and get the best possible people for each position that we can fill. So John, being our financial guy, you keep us straight, keep the city in going in the right direction financially. Why don't you tell the people of Paducah what our main sources of revenue are for the city?
Okay. Well, Mayor, when we talk about the main sources of the city, generally people are talking about the general fund, and everybody, of course, if you own a house in Paducah, you have the privilege of paying property taxes. And I think a lot of folks think that property tax is our mainstay, but really it only makes up about 18% of our overall budget for the general fund. Actually, the biggest revenue source is payroll tax, and that makes up right at 45%, or about $13.7 million projected for next year. And then that's followed, of course, by property tax at 18%, and then that's followed by a business license at 14% of our total revenues. And then the insurance premium tax makes up, projected next year at $3.3 million, or just shy of 11% of our total general fund revenue.
So you had the payroll tax, property tax, business license tax, insurance premium tax.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Those are our four revenue generating taxes. We've had a lot of challenges with our insurance premium tax. Talk a little bit about what direction that's going in.
Okay. Well, the insurance premium tax is actually a tax based on cars, your house, your business, whatever the insurance premium is that you've paid based on the risk, which is located in the city of Paducah. And the current tax rate is, and has been for as long as I've been around, the last 21 years, is right at 6%. And as you know, we've had some economic difficulties nationwide, and with that have come challenges for us locally. A lot of people, including the city of Paducah, we've done everything we can to cut back on our expenses, and with that, you might raise your deductibles, you might drop some insurances, you might divest yourself of things that you don't really need to have, assets that you don't want to cover. And so with that, and then also in the communities, some people have just simply dropped insurance coverage completely. And we have seen since the recession, we peaked out in 2008 at $4.7 million in total income for the general fund and insurance premiums. Next year we're projecting right at $3.3 million. We've seen it continue to go down, go down, and go down. We hope that next year it'll level off, flatten out, and hopefully start to come back, because that's a huge, huge drop for us. Mm-hmm. We've been told by our insurance brokers that the insurance markets are now becoming, I don't know the exact terminology, but it's supposed to be rising. The premiums will continue to go back up or flatten out at least. And so with that, this tax being a function of the premiums, then we hope to see it flatten out and come back also.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about our payroll tax, but right now, Jeff, why don't you talk a little bit about the process that we go through in developing the current year budget, if you would.
Be happy to. That process has probably changed in Paducah as it has around the country, especially with the recession or economic downturn, whatever you care to refer to it as, occurring 2008, 2009. The city no longer simply does an incremental review and allocation of a little more money every year like maybe we did at one point in time, because the fact of the matter is that expenses increases have outpaced new revenue for the past several years. So we've transformed into somewhat of a program review mode where we are more actively reviewing programs to see where we can perhaps reduce the size of programs or possibly even eliminate programs to deal with the imbalance between revenues and costs. We have a number of things that drive our costs up annually. Pension cost in Kentucky is a big issue for cities, has been for a while, and is probably going to be the biggest issue for the next several years. That drives our costs up. Fuel, many of the normal inflationary costs that folks incur in their family budget. So without additional revenue, or at least enough to pay the increased costs from one year to the next, we have to manage the budget and find ways to absorb expense increases without necessarily being able to fund them with new revenue. So what I've asked department directors to do, especially the last couple of years, is to try to inventory the programs that they're into in their departments, and there are an innumerable number of programs that the city is into, some large, some very, very small, with an eye towards what is it that's most important that we protect or that we stay in, or how do we prioritize this so that we continue to direct funding where it needs to be, and perhaps consider in some instances where it doesn't make sense to continue funding something given the revenue shortfall. So that really explains the process that we are into these days, and I think it's a very responsible process. It's a managed process, and it's one that also I think gives the elected officials the ability to really thoughtfully and deliberately make that tough decision as to whether or not we want to take whatever steps might be necessary to increase revenue so that certain cutbacks would not have to happen. So we think that it's a very inclusive process, both at the staff level and the elected officials level. Going forward, our challenge is going to continue to be there in this regard. Looking forward to next year, we expect we'll have a greater revenue to expense imbalance than what we've even had the last year or two. So it's going to continue to be a challenge, but I'm confident with everybody working together and with a lot of input from the community that we'll continue to put together and adopt responsible budgets for the city of Paducah.
John, you're a big part of the budgeting process. What are some of the challenges that you see in your job at getting us ready for the new budget?
Well, Mayor, the city manager covered a lot of those points, but it gets tougher and tougher every year. Again, we've been doing this. I was hired by the city of Paducah in 1991, and if we could go back to the old days, that would be great, because as the city manager just said, it used to be, and it was very common, I think, across the country, where people would just expect that there would be more revenue and you just continue to do what you've been doing in the past. And with the economic downturn in 2008, that's all different now. And we don't even generally refer back to trends prior to the recession, because we're in a new normal, whatever that means. And so we have economic pressures on us. The biggest one, and the city manager did mention it, was the pension issue, that the city of Paducah has absolutely no control over that. That's governed by the state and decisions made by them. And when that happens, along with fuel and utilities and things of that nature, it becomes more and more difficult for us to balance our budget. Just like people at home, you know, you have a finite source of revenue or income to deal with, and you might want to go out and do something different, eat out more often, whatever it may be. And in these tough times, we have to, you know, eat out less often, drive the car less often, cut back where we can, because we have the revenues not growing like they once were, but the expenditures continue to going up. And so what do you do with that? You have to cut back on things that you think you can not do. And as the city manager said, you cut out programs that you can. You cut back and become more efficient, more economic. If you can do the same job with 2 jobs with 1 person, that's what you do. Yeah. And we're more than willing to do it, and have done so over the last 4 or 5 years now. We've trimmed back our workforce and are doing more actually with less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have people moving into your city, buying real estate for property tax revenue to go up. You've had to create new jobs, whether the retail jobs, medical jobs, manufacturing jobs, in order for the payroll tax to go up. And like you said, since 08, it's been very difficult. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned efficiencies, and Jeff, why don't you kind of talk a little bit about the city and what we have done to become more efficient through consolidation and things like that.
Thank you. I can mention a couple of things. In the time that I've been here, we have combined the risk management and human resources departments. They previously were separate and sort of standalone. And under the direction of Cindy Medford, they are now a consolidated department with a smaller staff than what they had previously been when they were separate, I think by 1 FTE or maybe 1.5, something like that. And that's been very successful. We've been very fortunate to find very good people to staff that department along with Cindy. Another thing we've done more recently, and this caught some headlines in the media not too long ago, was to bring the inspection department into the fire department as part of the fire prevention division. Interestingly, compared to 2008, there are 8 fewer people working in the fire department and inspections combined than what there were then. And that suggests, I think, some efficiency there, but along with that consolidation and efficiency, it's not something that's just measured or should only be viewed as a matter of fewer people working there, but by bringing like operations together, operations with a similar mission, you get a more effective operation. You get people that are in more communication with one another, can share their thoughts, share their resources, and give a more consistent, more kind of cohesive message back and service back to the public. So those are our goals for the consolidation of inspections into fire prevention. And we're pretty confident that they are going to work out over the long term. We're already seeing some good results in those areas. So along with becoming more efficient, you know, the two E words, efficiency and effectiveness, we think that in both those two instances of consolidation that we've made significant progress in both regards.
And then before you got here, we did consolidate engineering and public works, which was a huge consolidation. Is that about it on the consolidation?
I think so. No, I think they're shown on the screen for viewers at home. We went back to 2009 and we had 343 full-time equivalent employees, and next year we're projecting to be at 309. So that's roughly 10% reduction in force, and we're doing exactly, carrying out the exact same services for the most part as we were before, except we're doing it more efficiently. And in Jeff's great example, the inspection and fire, not only are they doing more with less, they're doing it with high tech and things of that nature.
Technology.
It's amazing how the operations in the inspections department have advanced in this short amount of time. And I'm not one that spends a lot of time talking about silos because they don't sound very positive. They sound like standalone little fiefdoms that don't communicate. But when you have that kind of a structure, and we do have a lot of departments in the city, and we have a lot of different occupational groups, and there are situations where crossover and resource sharing is not possible or doesn't make sense. But where it is possible and where it does make sense, we ought to be doing that, and we need to be doing that. And inspections and fire prevention was the best example of where those opportunities lied, and we took advantage of that. And I think, as I mentioned before, the results are becoming self-evident and will continue to evidence themselves to the community, both in the quality of the services. As John mentioned, one of the things that's really advanced there is technology in the fire prevention area / inspection area, in not only the work that's done, but the record keeping and the retrieval and all of the data that's generated and used in that department is being shared with other departments. So there are all kinds of synergies that we're seeing there as well. But I also want to mention that for those kind of things to occur, it takes good leadership, and it takes, obviously, it takes direction and from the top, but it takes leadership at the department level, and we have that and have taken advantage of that in that particular instance, and that's something that we ought to do. That's good management. That's why I like to think part of the reason that the city manager form of government is in place in Paducah, so that we get those kinds of results. And you mentioned earlier, alluded to our selection process for our people. We do go through a lengthy process, a very involved process, to try to get the best people we can, so that we can have expectations and see results come back to the community.
You're exactly right. If we did not have a staff like we do, a management team like we have, we could not ask one department head to consolidate and be over two departments. I mean, they wouldn't have the ability to do that. So we hire good people, and when we need them to step up and take on more responsibility, they're prepared to do that and are willing to do that.
That's right.
So you can see that our manpower is going down. You're not going to find that in the federal government, and you're not going to find that in the state government. But city government has to be efficient, and we have to live within our budget. We have to do what John Perkins says, that when we're spending too much money, we cut back. the payroll tax, going back to the payroll tax, two things have happened. We've decreased our property tax over the last several years from 44 cents per hundred to 25 cents per hundred. So city homeowners have benefited from that. At the same time, we did increase our payroll tax from 1.5% to 2%. But when we did that, we made an investment fund that we put all of that 0.5% in. And that budget, we have two separate budgets. It's online. People can look at it and know where that money is going. So why don't you briefly give a little bit of an outline of where those investment funds go,
Okay.
John?
Many years ago, I guess it was 2006 or so, as you said, the City Commission set aside 0.5% of payroll tax. It used to be 1.5, now it's 2. And with that, we also were mandated to set up a special fund, and it's called the investment fund. And in that investment fund, those monies are to be used only for property tax relief, which we've done. And then the three big ones that people always think about are economic development, neighborhood redevelopment, and capital infrastructure expenditures. And that's what that money is used for exclusively. Now, if somebody is interested, they can go to our website, City of Paducah's website, and you can actually see all of our audits. I forget how many years we go back, 7, 8, 9 years of audits. And our budgets are also there. And there's also on our website a thing called the investment scorecard. And on the investment scorecard, it will tell you exactly what the funds from the 0.5 cent payroll tax have been used for several years going back. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just last week we posted fiscal 12, the year we just ended. It's now out there, so you can see exactly how the funds were used. So it's completely transparent. Everybody can see exactly what's there, again, several years back.
So we use those funds, now that 0.5%, to fund economic development. We all know that we need to have new jobs, create new jobs for our community. We're trying to upgrade our inner city neighborhoods, and we're using that money for that. Mm-hmm. And infrastructure, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, new roads, and things like that. So the money is not going into our general budget.
No.
It's not being lost in the general budget. It
No.
is very specific what it's used for.
That's right. It's accounted for and audited separately.
And so consequently, it makes the city stronger, and it gives us a better quality of life. Mm-hmm. Bonding is something that has been talked about recently, Jeff, and first of all, our bond rating has gone up, which as the federal government's rating goes down, ours goes up, which is a good thing. But there's always going to be reasons that we're going to have to float bonds. And right now we're talking about the flood wall and work that has to be done there, and there'll be some other opportunities to do capital projects. Why don't you talk a little bit about our bonding situation?
Well, let me first say that debt financing is a integral component of city finance across the nation. It is not an evil thing. It's a necessary thing. And it's not something that you do more than you have to, but you do it judiciously and prudently and with a lot of thought as to what is appropriate to bond for and when's a good time to bond. Right now happens to be a good time to bond because interest rates are at historic lows. But let me mention something about the philosophy behind capital financing, and the flood wall is an excellent example. It lends itself to what I'm going to say. That the flood wall is a $20-some million project with a city share of several $1 million. So it's a large enough amount of money that we will need to bond to come up with it. So we're going to rebuild something that's been around for 50 years, and we're going to rebuild it to last another 50 years. So that meets one of the primary criteria for debt financing, which is long-term lifespan. So what we would call in this case a 50-year plus asset. So when we think about financing that and paying the cost of that improvement over the next 50 years, let's ask the question, who's actually going to pay for that? Well, who's going to pay for it will be the taxpayers going forward, who happen to be the same folks who are going to benefit from that improvement or that asset. So the philosophy of that would suggest that those who are going to benefit or use the asset ought to pay for it. So through a debt financing where you pay over an extended period of time, that is going to happen. So I hope that makes sense to folks,
Yeah.
that the combination of the need to come up with a significant amount of money for a large capital investment that we pay back over an extended period of time as it is being used, being paid by the people that use it, makes sense.
Excellent point. And so here we are already at the end of our allotted time, but I thought it was important that the city, that the citizens of Paducah understand that Paducah financially is strong. We have strong people looking over our budget. When we spend money, we spend it because we need to spend it, but we don't spend too much, we don't bond too much. And so as long as Paducah is strong financially, then we can continue to do the things that Paducah needs to do to be, as Jeff said, a vibrant community. So I hope the people of Paducah have enjoyed this explanation and understand a little bit better about the financial situation of Paducah. And I hope you'll come back and join us next time we do Quality of Life Matters in Paducah. Thank you.